What is going on, SoFi fans? Welcome back to Trending Stocks. Today I want to give you an overview of what is happening with SoFi. Go over some of the data points, what shorts are doing, as well, just generally where I see things going from here. Before I get into any of that, make sure to hit that thumbs up and subscribe. I always greatly appreciate that. And with that, let's get right to it. So based on Friday, it did go down 5.16%. A lot of eyes are on it though. So 38.7 million shares being traded, 24.6 is the average. These are all the transactions that did occur on the secondary market over $100,000. Some fairly big ones. So 4.11 million, 1.49 million. And most likely next week, you're going to see this exchange blow up over $100,000 because typically the last week before the quarter ends, you do see a lot of institutions, ETFs, rebalancing their portfolios. So you're going to see this very, very active. These are all the transactions that did occur on the dark pool, which as of late has been a very popular exchange for SoFi. So 5.68 million, 3.75 million. So a lot of transactions that have been occurring on here. This, unfortunately, and dark pool is linked to shorting more commonly than not. So I'll give you an overview of that. At the time of doing this video, there hasn't been any press releases, no SEC filings as of late, the last being on September the 12th. So I've already covered that in a previous video. So some things to note on why SoFi is trending down. More on a joking aspect, it does look like good old Jim Cramer did actually say that he is a buyer of SoFi. So that probably did burn it overall, unfortunately. But generally speaking, over and above that though, it is just simply Powell, because a lot of people are also kind of questioning exactly what happened. So even this individual right here did say that I have no idea why SoFi is dropping roughly about 5.6% on Friday, 17% in the week. It just doesn't make sense. But in reality, it is just strictly Powell. He didn't really give that good of a optimistic viewpoint for the remaining part of 2023 and especially going into 2024. But over and above that though, if you also incorporate the recent decline based on a lot of the stats that's out there for bank credit, that is just unfortunately what is piggybacking and kind of causing SoFi to go down as a result of that. And plus in SoFi's specific case, there is a lot of actual just poor technicals. So I'll touch on all of that in a second. There was a good article that did come out yesterday, says why I'm buying here. And funny enough, I actually did buy yesterday as well. Not too many shares. I think it was only around 30 shares at a price of $7.52. So I didn't catch the bottom per se, but of course with SoFi, as I've indicated in the past, I'm not ever trying to catch the bottom. I'm always just trying to just buy, forget about it, live my life, and just obviously in several years and decades from now, SoFi is going to be one of those investments that you wish you bought in lower. But of course, whether you're trying to always catch the bottom, I think it's kind of more of a short-term losing kind of game essentially, but that's just me, not a financial advisor, of course. But there was this good article that did come out talking on how a lot of good achievements have been coming out, one of which is the recent IPO of Instacart, which in reality was a pretty big success. And over and above that, just a lot of their actual earnings have shown that despite the volatility in the market, it's still able to retain a lot of its customers and as well entice a lot of customers and new members to join SoFi. So once again, I think this is a fairly good article. Overall, it talks on a lot of other things, but you know me, I like to give the Cole's notes, the quick summary. At the time of doing this video, there wasn't any analyst ratings because I know analysts sometimes can cause some a ripple effect in the stock price, but the last being John from Jefferies, and he did give a $15 price target, which was very, very optimistic. But like I've said on my last video, I feel like this was not incorporated in the price because typically when there is a good analyst rating, typically that causes the stock price to go up at least by 2 to 3%, but this did absolutely nothing for the stock price. So once again, just giving you a viewpoint of that. As far as options, starting off with Friday, there was $6.38 million in calls being purchased versus 4.86 million in puts. So based on this information, people are anticipating for it to trend up as a result. But if you do compare this to previous days, the amount of puts has definitely gone up pretty considerably. So of course, at the same time, if you are comparing that aspect, there is a good amount of people that are anticipating SoFi to trend down. But if you do look at, for instance, the last 3 days, because I think it is very important to look at this viewpoint because that also does encumber the Fed meeting. So as you can see, over the last 3 days, there's been $12 million in puts being purchased, 15 in calls. So like I said, if you kind of take away a lot of the Fed meeting fear around that and a lot of the puts, generally a lot of people are very, very optimistic. But like I mentioned, because of Powell just not really giving that good of a viewpoint and future outlook, this is unfortunately where things get very interesting. If you are optimistic though, I'll give you an overview of this. This is all the calls, the strike prices, expiry dates. It is anticipated to kind of stay between the, it looks like $7.50 to $8 range by the end of next week, September the 29th. As far as puts though, there is a fair amount of individuals that is assuming it is going to be sub $7. So once again, just kind of be aware that conveniently when it is talking on sub $7, that's more linked to the technicals. So I'll give you an overview of that in 1 second. But first and foremost, I'll just go over shorts. As I've said in the past, I do not see SoFi being a short squeeze. I'm just bringing this up merely as a benchmark. Short score is currently 57, utilization is 24.8, and as far as what shorts did on Friday, they increased 1.11 million shares. 13.1% of the free float is being shorted. 105.48 million shares overall are being shorted, and cost to borrow average is 0.86%. And when it comes down to this and how I analyze this information, the fact that they did increase their position by 1.11 million shares on a very much red day does signal that they do feel that it's A, justified, and B, that they do see more downside coming. So once again, that's more of a side note, but as far as the technicals, I'll give you an overview of that. So with it currently at $7.54, it is trading between this S2 and this S1. So if you compare this to a lot of other growth stocks, it is lagging a little bit. So that's something just to consider. $7.99 was a very strong resistance, and $7.23 is a very strong support. So it didn't really touch this S2 from Friday, but based on the technicals, it is indicating that it is going to most likely touch that in the early part of the week. Wednesday, there isn't really any data, more so, but on Thursday and Friday, there's GDP, and as well on Friday, there's PCE. So that might give the broader market a quick rally up, essentially, assuming that data is good. But in SoFi's case, I do feel that it is going to be touching this S2 more so at the beginning part of the week, like I mentioned. So let me know your thoughts on that in the comments below. As far as it breaking below that, I don't see it justified in my own opinion based on, especially just alone, what Powell does say. Unless good old Jim Cramer comes on and keeps reiterating, saying that he sees SoFi as a buy and he's not selling, then that might be the demise of SoFi ultimately. But generally speaking, I do feel that there is a certain level of overreaction that is happening as a result of obviously what Powell mentioned. That's just my own opinion, not financial advisor, of course. So when it comes down to it, like I mentioned, I do feel that 723 is a point to watch for. If it does, oddly enough, break below that, then you can anticipate it to trade between that 601 and the 723, because as I've been saying for I feel like a while now, over the last couple of videos, on the actual chart, it has just been range bound between the 50 and 100-day moving average, looks like since around beginning of August, give or take. So it's been very easy to do options and many things like that, and it actually did, surprisingly enough, attempt a breakout, just didn't really have enough, unfortunately, to stay above that. But because of good old Powell, unfortunately, that was the ammunition that shorts needed, and just the bearishness in the market needed to break the technicals, essentially, with SoFi and a lot of other banking sector and fintechs and stuff like that. So once again, the technicals are breaking down. As far as shorts, that is a little bit more of a negative bearish indicator right now, signal. As far as this, the options, like I said, if you do kind of compare it to previous days, it is bearish, but generally right now, there is still a fair share of individuals that is kind of optimistic. So once again, I'm just interpreting the data. You guys do what you see fit. I did buy in on Friday, like I mentioned, at 752 or whatever else it was. But in reality, I do have a long-term mentality when it comes down to SoFi, because like I've signaled, it is not going to become a overnight success easily. It's going to have a very bumpy ride, and I know over this last little bit, this uptrend, things seem to be very euphoric. People were very, very excited, but in reality, this is just the tip of the iceberg on potentially how high SoFi could go bigger picture. But once again, let me know your thoughts on all that in the comments below. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up and subscribe. I always greatly appreciate that. If you do like my channel and support the growth, take a look at my memberships, link in the description below and also the comments. So with all that said, hopefully everyone has an amazing weekend, and I appreciate you all watching.